In my past life, just before giving birth, my mother-in-law gave me a pair of peace buckles, saying they would bless the safety of both mother and child. After I put them on, I died along with my unborn child that very night, while my sister-in-law, who was suffering from cancer, miraculously recovered. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my mother-in-law gave me the peace buckles. That night, I hung them around the neck of a stray dog. This time, let's see who laughs last. The entire story is written in blood. The moment I opened my eyes, I could still smell the rusty, metallic scent in my nose. The excruciating pain churning in my stomach receded like the tide, replaced by a chilling sense of disorientation. Before me was not the stark white ceiling of a hospital, but the crystal chandelier in my bedroom, its warm yellow light so gentle it felt almost blinding. I was 9.5 months pregnant, my belly swollen like an overturned wok. This realization suddenly crashed into my mind, freezing me in place. No, I shouldn't be here, should be in the delivery room, hearing my child's first cry amid heart-wrenching agony, should be lying in a pool of blood, feeling my body temperature slowly drain away, feeling the tiny life inside me being mercilessly drained away along with me. In my past life, that object had been pressed against my chest, scorching hot like a red-hot branding iron. A ping and co, my hands suddenly flew to my chest, where there was nothing but emptiness. Ruatang, what's wrong? A hand reached out and grasped mine, its grip neither too light nor too heavy, with a thin layer of calluses on the fingertips. Lu Yenzhou's voice fell from above, laced with just the right amount of concern. Why is your face so pale? Is your back hurting again? I looked up and met his refined, handsome face. He was wearing loungewear, and the gaze behind his glasses was gentle and flawless. A glass of warm water sat on the nightstand, still steaming, while the phone beside it played white noise. He had researched it and learned that white noise could help pregnant women sleep more soundly. What a thoughtful husband. If I hadn't experienced that night, I would have thought exactly that. But I did. I remember how he stood outside the delivery room, how he kept his eyes down and stayed silent as my mother-in-law whispered to him, and how, as my vision grew blurrier, the last thing I saw was the back of him turning to walk away. He never came in, not even once. Ruatang, he called again, his brow slightly furrowed. You scared me. Did you have a nightmare? I stared into his eyes for 3 seconds, then I tugged at the corner of my mouth, revealing a smile exactly like the ones I always wore. It's nothing, I just dreamed about giving birth, and it scared me a little. Lu Yenzhou let out a sigh of relief, reached out, and ruffled my hair. Silly, I'm here for you. Mom said she'll take you to the hospital tomorrow for the final prenatal checkup. Everything is arranged, so don't worry. The word mom made my stomach churn. His mother, Lu Guilan, that old lady who always wore a fragrant cloud gauze cheongsam and a jade bracelet on her wrist year-round, the mother-in-law who always called me sweetheart with a smile on her face, the one who, the day before I went into labor in my previous life, walked into my room holding a rosewood box, her face full of kindness, and said to me, Ruatang, this is a peace charm I asked for from Mount Putua. It's been blessed, wear it, and it will protect you and the baby. At the time, I was so moved my eyes welled up with tears. I thought I had married into the right family. Even though my sister-in-law, Lu Yusin, never really liked me, my mother-in-law truly treated me like her own daughter, and so, I put on that peace charm. That night, my stomach started to hurt. By the time I was rushed to the hospital, the fetal heartbeat was so faint it was almost inaudible. Doctors and nurses were scrambling around in chaos. As I was wheeled into the delivery room, my mother-in-law held my hand and said, It's okay, Mom will be waiting for you outside. That was the last time I heard her voice. What happened later, I heard in fragments during my final moments. The delivery room door opened a crack, and someone whispered, Mom, she's not going to make it. This was Lu Yenzhou's voice. I knew Lu Guilan's tone was calm. How is your sister doing? The latest news is that her indicators are starting to improve. The doctor said it's like a miracle. It's not a miracle. Lu Guilan's voice dropped even lower, so low that I almost thought it was an illusion. It was the peace buckle that took the blow for her. At that moment, I could no longer speak. Blood gushed from my body like water from an open faucet. My consciousness sank bit by bit, yet I heard it clearly. Every single word. The peace buckle took the blow for her. Lu Yusin was diagnosed with lymphoma. By the time it was detected, it was already in the late stage. The whole family kept it from me, claiming only that my sister-in-law was frail and needed rest. I foolishly brought her soups, but Lu Yusin wouldn't even look at them. I thought she simply disliked me as her sister-in-law. I didn't know that the entire family was waiting for the right moment, waiting for my due date, waiting for that so-called timely opportunity to trade my life and my child's life for Lu Yusin's. Ruo Tang, Lu Yenzhou's voice pulled me out of my memories, and I realized my hand gripping the bedsheet was trembling, my nails turning pale. Are you really okay? He looked at me, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. I slowly released my grip and smiled at him. I'm fine, just a bit flustered. Yenzhou, I want some water. As he turned to fetch the water cup, I stared at the back of his head, forcing the surging hatred back into my chest. Bit by bit, I couldn't rush. I was back to a time before everything had happened. So tonight, let's take a gamble. The moment the knocking sound echoed, my heart tightened abruptly, and the door was pushed open. Lu Guilin walked in holding a rosewood box, wearing the exact same kindly smile I remembered. Ruotang, dear, I brought something for you. She walked over to the bedside, sat down, placed the box beside my hand, and slowly opened it. Nestled on the red velvet lining was a jade button, a smooth, milky white Hetian jade, carved with auspicious cloud patterns, threaded through the center with a red cord. It looked like an ordinary, unremarkable piece, not even particularly valuable, but I knew exactly what it was. My pupils contracted slightly, yet the smile on my face didn't waver in the slightest. Mom, what is this? Pendant. Lu Guilin picked up the jade pendant, the red cord winding once around her fingertips. Mom, I specially went to Mount Putua to have a great monk bless it for 49 days. You wear it, and it will protect you and my grandson, keeping you safe and sound. As she spoke, she tried to slip it over my neck. Mom, I reached out and took the jade pendant, not letting it touch my neck. You went to so much trouble, traveling all this way. Lu Guilin's smile faltered for a moment, then widened even more. What trouble? You're our Lu family's daughter-in-law, carrying the Lu family's seed. Who else would I care for if not you? Her gaze fell on my hand, watching as I took the jade pendant myself. A flicker of satisfaction, barely noticeable, passed through her eyes. Put it on, wear it to the prenatal checkup tomorrow. May the Bodhisattva bless everything to go smoothly. Okay. I slipped the red cord over my neck and, in front of her, tucked the jade pendant into my collar. Lu Guilin patted the back of my hand. Good girl, get some rest early. You have to wake up early tomorrow. She stood up and, before leaving the room, glanced back at me. That glance was brief, so brief that if I hadn't been deliberately observing, I wouldn't have noticed it at all, but I did notice. In that glance, there was a certainty and smugness, like a hunter watching prey fall into a trap. The door closed, and I remained seated on the bed, unmoving. Lu Yenzhou had gone to the study to take a call, leaving me alone in the bedroom. Outside the window, the moon was mostly obscured by clouds, and the light in the room dimmed. I reached into my collar and pulled out the jade pendant. It lay against my skin, cold and icy, exactly as it had been in my past life. Only, in my past life, it had started to grow warm the night before I went into labor. Like a tiny, awakening heart, I got out of bed and walked to the window. On the lawn in the yard, a dirty yellow stray dog was curled up by the bushes, dozing. Its name was Big Yellow, a stray in the neighborhood that had somehow slipped into the Lu family's yard. Lu Guilin found it filthy and had asked the property management to catch it several times, but Big Yellow had always cleverly escaped. I pushed open the window, and the night wind rushed in. De Huang, the big yellow dog, alertly raised his head, his ears perked up, and his two round, glossy eyes fixed on me. I took the peace buckle from around my neck, the red string swayed in my hand, and the jade pendant glowed with a warm luster under the moonlight. De Huang tilted his head, looking at it, probably thinking it was some kind of delicious treat. I lowered my voice and called to him. He wagged his tail. I tossed the peace buckle down. The jade pendant landed on the ground in front of De Huang. He lowered his head to sniff it, likely deciding it wasn't food, then looked up at me again. I made a gesture to him and whispered, "Good boy, pick it up." As if he understood, De Huang lowered his head, picked up the peace buckle in his mouth, the red string dangling by his lips, the jade pendant swinging as he walked. I watched De Huang, the peace buckle in his mouth, wagging his tail as he slipped through the gaps in the bushes and disappeared into the night. I closed the window, drew the curtains, and lay back down on the bed. My heart was pounding rapidly, as if it were about to burst out of my throat, yet my mind was unusually clear, so clear that even the tips of my fingers felt cold. The first step was done. I had sent away that deadly peace buckle. Now, it all depended on tonight. When Lu Yenzhou returned from the study, I was lying on my side, pretending to be asleep. He quietly lifted the covers and got in. After a while, he reached out and touched the back of my neck. He was looking for the peace buckle. When he didn't find it, his hand paused for a moment, then withdrew. I heard her turn over, and her breathing gradually became even. Perhaps 2 hours passed, maybe 3. Time grew viscous in the darkness, each minute feeling stretched out. My eyes remained open, staring at the crystal chandelier on the ceiling, waiting for that sound. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard it. It wasn't De Huang barking. De Huang never barked. He was a mute dog who only wagged his tail. It was a strange sound, as if something had been stifled in the throat and then abruptly cut off, so short that if the entire neighborhood hadn't been as quiet as a grave, no one would have heard it. Then, a very faint, muffled thud came from the courtyard. I sat up almost instantly. Lu Yenzhou was startled awake by my movement and asked groggily, "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said. "I'm going to the bathroom." I got out of bed, walked barefoot to the window, and pulled back the curtain just a crack to look outside. The moon had emerged from behind the clouds. The dog named De Huang lay on the lawn in the courtyard, curled up into a ball, in the exact same posture as several hours ago. If it weren't for a dark red substance glistening in the moonlight at the corner of its mouth, I would have thought it was simply asleep. That was blood flowing from her mouth, soaking through the fur on her chin. Her eyes were half open, but the bright, lively gleam within them was gone. The jade pendant was no longer in her mouth. I took a closer look and found that the jade clasp had fallen beside her front paws, shattered into 3 pieces. The moonlight illuminated the 3 fragments of broken jade, and on the fractured surface of one half, a dark red streak ran through it, as if blood had seeped into the jade. De Huang's belly still rose and fell slightly. She was still alive, but only barely. I pulled the curtains closed and lay back down on the bed. Lu Yenzhou turned over and mumbled, still feeling unwell. I didn't answer. His hand reached out and rested on my shoulder. With my eyes closed, I felt the warmth of his palm gradually spreading. This man's palms were still as hot as they had been in my past life, so hot that it made me nauseous. Just before dawn, a scream echoed from downstairs. It was Lu Yusin's voice. "Mom, it hurts so much, Mom." The piercing sound was like a knife scraping across glass, tearing through the entire house. Immediately after came the sound of Lu Guilan's footsteps, thudding rapidly down the hallway. Then came the noise of a door being slammed open. Yusin, what's wrong with you?" "Mom, it hurts. My whole body aches, like it's on fire." Lu Yenzhou also woke up, sitting up abruptly, his face turning pale in an instant. "It's Yusin." He threw off the covers and ran out without even putting on his slippers. I slowly sat up, leaning against the headboard, listening to the commotion downstairs. Someone was crying, someone was shouting, and someone was calling an ambulance on the phone. Lu Guilan's voice drifted out from Lu Yusin's room, intermittent and indistinct, but one phrase was carried by the wind from the end of the corridor, slipping through the crack in the door and landing clearly in my ears. "Impossible." She was clearly wearing the peace buckle. A faint smile curved my lips. "Mother-in-law, you're right, she was indeed wearing it. But it wasn't your daughter who wore it, it was a dog, a stray dog you wouldn't even bother to glance at." After dawn broke, everyone in this house would slowly come to understand one thing. In this life, whoever deserves to suffer, will suffer. Outside the window, birds began to chirp, and a thin layer of pale white light appeared along the eastern horizon. I touched my belly. The little life inside gave a gentle kick. I lowered my head and smiled at my stomach. "Be good, wait a little longer. Once Mom finishes settling this score, we'll live a good life." Downstairs, Lu Guilan's heart-wrenching cries finally erupted. Yusin, hold on. Mom won't let anything happen to you. Mom absolutely won't let anything happen to you. She wouldn't let Lu Yusin come to harm. In my past life, she traded my life and my child's life for Lu Yusin's. In this life, let's see what she'll use to trade next. I reached under the pillow and touched the old mobile phone. The screen lit up, displaying a sent message record. The timestamp was 9:30 p.m. last night. The recipient was my college roommate, Zhong Man, now a partner at a law firm. The message contained only 5 words: "Zhong Man, help me investigate." Attached was a photo showing Lu Guilan's back, standing at the side entrance of a temple in Putua Mountain, holding a redwood box. The image had been extracted from surveillance footage. The angle was tricky, but it clearly captured the smug, self-satisfied expression on her face. That was what Zhong Man had uncovered for me after my death in my past life. it took me a whole year to discover that this peace buckle hadn't been obtained from Putua Mountain, but from somewhere else, a place tens of thousands of miles away from Putua Mountain. The phone vibrated. Zhong Man replied, "Found something, let's meet." I tucked the phone back under the pillow, closed my eyes, and listened to Lu Guilan's increasingly distant cries. The wail of an ambulance approached from afar, growing closer and louder. Morning sunlight filtered through the gap in the curtains, falling on my eyelids, warm and gentle, like a tender hand. Before I fell asleep, one last thought flashed through my mind: mother-in-law, don't cry too soon, this is just the beginning. When you discover where that peace buckle truly shattered, and on whose body it broke, you'll know what real pain feels like. The ambulance arrived quickly and left just as fast. Standing by the window of the second-floor bedroom, I watched Lu Guilan and Lu Yenzhou clumsily lift Lu Yusin into the vehicle. Lu Yusin was wrapped in a thin white blanket, curled into a ball, constantly crying out in pain. Her face was as pale as paper, her lips purple, and her forehead covered in cold sweat. Before getting into the ambulance, Lu Guilan looked back at the house. Her gaze pierced through the thin morning mist and fell coldly and emptily on the window of my room. I stood behind the curtains. He couldn't see me, but I knew what he was thinking. He was wondering why it was his daughter who suffered, not me. The ambulance door slammed shut, the siren wailed again, and the red taillights gradually blurred into 2 points of light in the mist, finally turning the corner and disappearing completely. The entire house fell silent, quiet as a coffin. When I changed clothes and went downstairs, Auntie Zhang, the nanny, was cleaning up the vomit outside Lu Yusin's room. She was squatting on the floor, holding a rag in her hand. When she looked up and saw me, a flicker of unease crossed her face. "Madam, you're awake." I glanced into Lu Yusin's room. "How is Yusin?" Auntie Zhang lowered her head and scrubbed the floor vigorously. The young lady suddenly fell ill in the middle of the night. She was in terrible pain. Madam and Sir both rushed to the hospital with her. They left in a hurry. "Sir asked me to tell you that they might not be back today and that you should have breakfast on your own." "Understood." I turned and walked toward the dining room, but after a few steps, I stopped. "Auntie Zhang, was there anything unusual about Yusin before she fell ill last night?" Auntie Zhang paused for a moment. She looked up at me, her lips moving as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she shook her head. "No, young lady, she was fine during the day yesterday and even ate an extra bowl of rice at dinner." Then suddenly, in the middle of the night, she didn't finish her sentence, lowering her head to continue scrubbing the floor, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. She knew something, or at least she had noticed something. Everyone in this house, except for the foolish me from my past life, probably knew something. On the dining table, a bowl of porridge and 2 side dishes were laid out, still steaming. I sat down, picked up my chopsticks, and began eating bite by bite. The Chinese-style millet and pumpkin porridge was thick and sweet, my favorite flavor since becoming pregnant. Auntie Zhang's cooking had always been excellent. In my past life, I ate her food for a whole year at the Lu family's house, never suspecting that there might be anything wrong with it. In this life, I wouldn't suspect it either, because their methods were far more sophisticated than something as crude as poisoning. A single piece knot was enough, clean and untraceable. After finishing my meal, I went upstairs and changed into an outfit for going out, a beige knitted maxi dress, a khaki trench coat over it, and flat, soft shoes. My 9.5-month pregnant belly was already very noticeable, and I had to lean back slightly while walking to maintain my balance. I stood in front of the full-length mirror and examined myself. The woman in the mirror looked calm, with gentle eyes and brows. Her hair was loosely tied at the back, a few stray strands hanging by her ears. She looked like an ordinary pregnant woman, waiting for her due date, waiting to become a mother. No one could tell that under this woman's pillow was an old phone, and stored in that phone was a message about her mother-in-law. I picked up my bag and left the house. A row of taxis was parked at the entrance of the residential complex. I randomly got into one and gave the name of a shopping mall in the city center. 10 minutes into the drive, I asked the driver to turn around and head to a cafe 3 blocks away. Zhong Man was already waiting for me. He was sitting in a booth by the window, a cup of Americano in front of him, a manila file folder in his hand, and his head bowed as he looked at his phone. Hearing my footsteps, he looked up. His gaze first fell on my face, then on my belly, and his eyes immediately reddened. "Shen Ruotang," he said, standing up, walking around the table, and carefully giving me a hug. His arms went around my shoulders, careful not to touch my belly, as if I were a piece of porcelain that could shatter at any moment. take it easy, take it easy, he said, becoming nervous himself. It's been 9 months, when is your due date? Next Wednesday, I said. Man let go of me and pulled me into a seat, his eyes scanning me up and down. You look okay. I didn't sleep at all last night after receiving your message in the middle of the night. Who exactly did you ask me to investigate? He pushed the manila file folder toward me. First, tell me, she's your mother-in-law, why are you investigating her? I didn't take the file folder. Slowly, first tell me, what did you find out? Zhong Man stared at me for a few seconds, took a deep breath, opened the file folder, and pulled out several photos and a few printed pages. You asked me to investigate Lu Guilan. I had colleagues in the Putua mountain area help me. The surveillance screenshot you gave me was taken at the main gate of Puji Temple, on the 15th of the month before last. He picked up the first photo and pushed it to the center of the table. The photo showed a side door of a temple, with blue bricks and gray tiles. A plaque hung above the door, bearing the 4 characters, Puji Chan Temple. Lu Guilan stood in front of the door, holding that redwood box in her hand, her facial expression clearly captured by the surveillance camera. Her trip to Putua Mountain itself was not problematic. The Lu family donates incense money to Puji Temple every year, and Lu Guilan visits twice a year, once in spring and once in autumn. The monks at the temple all know her. Zhong Man picked up the second photo. The angle of this photo was different from the previous one, captured from another surveillance camera. Lu Guilan was standing in an alley outside the side door of Puji Temple. Across from her stood another person, wearing a gray monk's robe, with a shaved head, looking like a monk. However, his face was covered by a conical hat, with only his chin visible. I investigated this person, Zhong Man said, tapping the gray-robed monk in the photo with his fingertip. He is not in the roster of Puji Temple's monks. I sent the photo to the temple's guest monk to look at, and he said he had never seen this person before. He is not from Puji Temple. Zhong Man took out another photo. Then I followed the direction of this alley and investigated further, and captured this at a small courtyard at the end of the alley. The photo showed an old Sihiyuan courtyard house, with gray walls and dark tiles. In the middle of the courtyard stood a dead locust tree, and beneath the tree was a stone table. On the stone table sat a redwood box identical to the one in my mother-in-law's hands. The box was open, and it was empty. What place is this? It's an old street called Huai Shu Xiang, Locust Tree Alley, at the foot of Putua Mountain. The courtyard has a sign that says, Ji Yuan Tang. I checked the business registration, and it's registered as an antique shop. The legal representative is. Zhong Man flipped to the last printed page. Lu Guilan. I stared at the black text on the paper, and my heart skipped a beat. Lu Guilan. That courtyard belongs to that gray-robed monk, not a Buddhist monk, but to one of his people. That piece not, Ruatang. What exactly are you investigating? Zhong Man grabbed my wrist, her expression turning serious. Your mother-in-law runs an antique shop at the foot of Mount Putua. The items in that shop have absolutely nothing to do with Puji Temple. He visits Mount Putua twice a year. It's not for worshipping Buddha, it's to manage that shop. Does Lu Yenzhou know about this? It doesn't matter whether he knows or not. I carefully gathered the photos one by one and placed them back into the file folder. What matters is where the contents of that box are now. Zhong Man was stunned. What contents? I didn't answer him because my phone rang. The name displayed on the screen was Yenzhou. I answered the call. Ruatang. Lu Yenzhou's voice came through the receiver, carrying obvious exhaustion and anxiety. Where are you? Aunt Zhang said you went out because you were feeling cooped up at home and wanted to take a walk. How is Yusin? There was a silence on the other end for a few seconds. Not good. Her voice was lowered. The doctor said her condition suddenly worsened. The cancer cells that had previously been controlled have spread again. Mom's emotions are very unstable. She's been crying non-stop. Do you need me to come over? No, he answered quickly. Too quickly to be normal. The hospital is chaotic. It's inconvenient for you. Given your pregnancy, take a walk outside and head back early. Don't overexert yourself. Okay, Ruatang. Another silence followed, and then he said, nothing, we'll talk when I get back. The phone call ended. I put my phone back into my bag, raised my head, and met the probing gazes of those around me. Lu Yenzhou didn't know about that shop, nor did he know I had stuffed the file folder into my bag. But he must have known about something else. What exactly? I stood up, steadied myself by holding onto the table, and said, Zhong Man, please help me investigate one more thing. Look into Lu Guilan's past, find out what she did before marrying into the Lu family, where she came from. and give me as much detail as possible. Zhong Man also stood up, her brows tightly furrowed. Ruotang, tell me the truth, what exactly happened? I looked into her eyes. Zhong Man was my best friend during my 4 years of university, the only person in my past life who shed tears for me after my death. At that time, I gradually grew cold in a pool of blood, outside the delivery room. He was the only one with red eyes, arguing with the doctor, insisting it was impossible, saying Shen Ruotang's health had always been good, and that sudden massive hemorrhaging couldn't happen. He was the only person who refused to believe in the word accident. Slowly, I said, if someone wanted to trade my life for another's, would you believe it? Zhong Man's expression changed instantly. He didn't speak, but the look on his face already gave me the answer. He believed it. When I returned to the Lu residence, it was already afternoon. The courtyard was quiet. Aunt Zhang was stewing soup in the kitchen, and the aroma drifted through the window. It was the scent of red date, goji berry, and black bone chicken soup. I wiped away the blood, didn't go upstairs, but instead walked toward the back of the courtyard. The Lu family's courtyard was large, part of the private garden attached to the villa. The lawn was neatly trimmed, surrounded by boxwoods pruned into spherical shapes. In the corner stood a rockery, beside which was a small pond for raising koi. I walked along the edge of the lawn and stopped near a bush. That was where De Huang had slipped out yesterday. Now, 2 branches of the bush were broken, and a few flattened leaves lay on the ground, their edges stained with dark brown traces. I crouched down and touched one of the leaves with my finger. The bloodstain had already dried. Following the trail deeper into the bush, I spotted a series of paw prints in the soil. The prints were small, made by De Huang's front paws, sinking deeply into the mud, leading toward the courtyard wall. Below the wall was a drainage outlet, where a corner of the iron fence had rusted away, leaving a hole no larger than a fist. That was how De Huang had escaped. I stepped back from the bush and walked around to the outside of the courtyard wall. Beyond the wall lay a narrow alley, rarely used by people. The ground was paved with bluestone slabs, with moss growing in the cracks. I walked along the alley for about 20 meters and found De Huang at the base of the wall. He was still alive, but barely, curled up beneath the wall. His body was huddled into a tiny ball, his yellow fur caked with dirt and dried blood. His mouth was slightly open, his tongue lolling out. Its color turned a dark purple. Hearing the footsteps, its ears twitched slightly. It struggled to open its eyes, but the light had gone out of them. They were dull and gray, like 2 glass beads clouded with dust, yet it still recognized me. The tip of its tail gave a faint wag, scraping softly against the bluestone pavement. I crouched down in front of him. It looked at me, emitting a very soft, barely audible sound from its throat, like a question, or perhaps a farewell. Fragments of the peace buckle were scattered around him. On the broken edges of the 3 jade pieces, dark red patterns emerged, resembling veins seeping out from within the jade. Under the sunlight, it became clearer. These were not ordinary cracks, but signs that something had been corroding the jade from the inside. I picked up the 3 fragments of jade and placed them together in my palm. The cracks aligned, but a small piece, about the size of a grain of rice, was missing, nowhere to be found. Huang Da's tail wagged again, even more faintly than before. Its eyes slowly closed, then laboriously opened again, as if it were desperately holding on, unwilling to close its eyes in front of me. Huang Da, I called softly. Thank you. I didn't know if he understood, but he gave one last wag of his tail, then rested his head on his front paws and slowly closed his eyes. The alley was utterly quiet. Sunlight streamed down from above the courtyard wall, falling on his dirty yellow fur, on the 3 broken jade pieces, and on the back of my hand. I remained crouched there until his breathing completely stopped. Then I stood up, clenched the 3 jade fragments tightly in my palm, and walked back to the Lu residence. In the kitchen, Aunt Zhang was still simmering soup. The aroma of red date, goji berry, and black bone chicken soup filled the entire house. In my past life, after giving birth, Aunt Zhang had also made this soup and brought it to my hospital room. Lu Guilan personally fed it to me, spoonful by spoonful, murmuring, drink more, to nourish your body. That night, I began to hemorrhage heavily. Now, thinking back, it no longer mattered whether there was something sinister in that bowl of soup. What mattered was that no one in the entire house was innocent. I went upstairs, locked the 3 jade fragments in the vanity drawer, and then took the key, threading it onto the pendant around my neck. Downstairs, the sound of the door opening echoed. Lu Yenzhou had returned. His footsteps moved urgently from the entryway, up the stairs. The bedroom door was pushed open, he stood in the doorway, his suit jacket draped over his arm, his tie loosened halfway, his eyes bloodshot. How is Ruatang? How is Yusin? He tossed the jacket onto the back of a chair, stepped inside, and crouched down in front of me, taking both my hands in his. His hands were ice cold, his fingertips trembling slightly. The situation isn't good, he said, his voice hoarse like sandpaper. The doctor said that the targeted therapy they had been using suddenly became ineffective, and the cancer cells were spreading much faster than expected. They needed to revise the treatment plan, but he didn't finish his sentence, and I understood anyway. There wasn't much time left. Lu Yusin didn't have much time left. The peace knot had shattered, the life-extending ritual had broken, and everything had come faster than anyone had anticipated. Where's Mom? I asked. Lu Yenzhou's hands stiffened slightly. Mom is at the hospital with Yusin, he said, bowing his head until his forehead rested against the back of my hand. There's something I've always wanted to ask you. What is it? He was silent for a long time, so long that I thought he had decided not to ask at all. Then he lifted his head and looked straight into my eyes, asking word by word, did you wear the peace buckle that Mom gave you yesterday? The light in the bedroom was fading, and the setting sun outside cast the last golden red glow into the room, falling on his face. His expression was complex, filled with curiosity, unease, and something I had never seen in his eyes before in my past life. Fear. What was he afraid of? Afraid that I had worn it, or afraid that I hadn't? I watched as the corner of his mouth slowly curved into a smile. I said, how could I not wear something my mother gave me? Lu Yenzhou's pupils contracted sharply. The expression lasted only a fleeting moment, so brief that if I hadn't been staring intently at his eyes, would never have noticed it. Then he smiled and patted the back of my hand. That's good, Mom said that peace buckle has been blessed and can protect both you and the baby. He stood up and turned toward the bathroom. I'm going to wash my face. I'll need to go to the hospital later. The bathroom door closed, and the sound of the faucet turned on, the splashing water drowning out all other noises. I sat on the edge of the bed, reached under the pillow, and pulled out that old mobile phone. There was a new message on the screen from Zhongman. Ruatang, you asked me to look into Lu Guilan's past, and I found something. Before she married into the Lu family, she lived for 3 years in a place called Anxi in Fujian. There is an ancient village there called Huaishu Village. The people in the village have practiced a certain craft for generations, making ping and ko, safety buckles. The light from the phone screen illuminated my face as I read the message word by word, etching every character into my mind. Fujian Anxi Huaishu Village Ping and ko, the courtyard at the foot of Mount Putua. And one name, Huaishu Lane, Jiyuan Hall. Lu Guilan didn't go to Mount Putua to pray for a ping and ko, she went to retrieve one. She took it from her own shop, a piece she had personally prepared to take my life and my child's. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped, and the door opened. Lu Yenzhou walked out, water droplets still on his face. He picked up his suit jacket from the back of the chair, walked to the door, and glanced back at me. Can you manage alone tonight? Yes, I'll go to sleep early, don't wait up for me. He left, leaving me alone in the bedroom. Outside the window, the sky had completely darkened. I reread the message on my phone, then deleted the chat history, turned off the phone, and tucked it back under the pillow. The 3 fragments of broken jade in my palm had warmed from my body heat. I took them out of the drawer and examined them closely under the desk lamp. The jade's texture was fine and delicate, genuine Hetian white jade, but the dark red patterns at the break points were clearer under the light. This wasn't dyeing or natural patination, it was something I had never seen before, like blood, but deeper and richer in color. I turned the 3 jade fragments over and examined their backs under the light. On the back of one half, there were a few extremely tiny characters, engraved with an incredibly fine needle, invisible unless you leaned in close. I brought that half of the jade up to my eyes and deciphered it character by character. It was 3 characters, not my name, but Lu Yusin's name and a date, July 15, 2001, that was Lu Yusin's birthday. I put down the jade pieces. My hand didn't tremble, not even a little, because I had long suspected that the Ping and Co was intended for Lu Yusin from the very beginning, not to bless him with peace, but to bear calamity in his place. Whoever wore it bound their life force to Lu Yusin's. The sicker Lu Yusin became, the more dangerous it was for the wearer. When Lu Yusin reached the brink of death, the wearer would die in his stead. In my past life, I wore the buckle, I died, and Lu Yusin lived. In this life, the buckle was worn by De Huang. De Huang nearly died, and Lu Yusin's condition worsened again. Everything fit perfectly. I locked the 3 fragments of broken jade back in the drawer and hung the key around my neck, resting it against my chest. Then I picked up my phone and sent a message to Zhong Man. Zhong Man, please help me find out how Lu Yenzhou's biological mother died back then. Sent. A wind rose outside the window, rustling the boxwood in the yard, and ripples spread across the koi pond beside the rockery. The moon emerged from the clouds, casting a cold light over the flattened bushes on the lawn. Tomorrow, I'm going somewhere, at the foot of Putua Mountain, in Huai Tree Lane, Jiyuan Hall. I want to know what secrets, besides the peace buckle, are hidden in that courtyard. Before going to Putua Mountain, I first went to the hospital, not to see Lu Yusin, but for a prenatal checkup. This was the final comprehensive prenatal examination scheduled by my attending physician, Director Zhao. Last week, Lu Yenzhou was supposed to accompany me, but Lu Yusin was staying in the oncology department of the same hospital, and he couldn't get away. It was just as well. I sat alone in the obstetrics waiting area, surrounded by pregnant women with swollen bellies, each accompanied by a husband or mother. When the nurse called my name, I had already waited for 40 minutes. Director Zhao was in his 50s, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and speaking in a measured tone. He placed the ultrasound probe on my belly, and a small, curled-up figure immediately appeared on the screen. The fetal position was correct, and the head had already descended into the pelvis. He moved the probe, squinting at the screen. The amniotic fluid level was normal, and the placenta was in the right position. Ms. Shen, the baby is developing well. Are you planning for a natural birth or a C-section? Natural birth. Then rest well these next few days. Don't overexert yourself. The due date is next Wednesday, but it's normal for first births to come early or late. If you see any bleeding or experience regular contractions, come to the hospital immediately. He pulled the ultrasound printout from the printer and handed it to me. I took it, looking at the blurry little outline on the paper. In my past life, I never even got this sheet. Director Zhao took off his glasses and suddenly lowered his voice to ask, Ms. Shen, has something happened at home recently? I looked up at him. I've been in this field for 30 years. He folded his glasses and put them in the pocket of his white coat. I can tell a pregnant woman's emotional state at a glance. When you came for your checkup last month, you were glowing. Today, there's no light in your eyes. I gripped the ultrasound report tightly in my hand. Director Zhao, I want to ask you something. If a pregnant woman experiences severe fright or comes into contact with something she shouldn't before delivery, could that lead to postpartum hemorrhage? Director Zhao's expression turned serious. Ms. Shen, what have you come into contact with? I'm just asking, I said. She stared at me for several seconds, then slowly replied, there are many causes of postpartum hemorrhage: uterine atony, retained placenta, trauma to the birth canal. These are the medical explanations, but having worked in obstetrics for 30 years, I have indeed encountered cases that cannot be explained by medicine. What kind of cases? There was a patient, 26 years old, healthier than anyone else, who had a vaginal delivery. The baby weighed 7 Jin and 2 Liang. Everything went smoothly. 2 hours after delivery, she suddenly began bleeding profusely, and the bleeding couldn't be stopped. Her life was saved only after her uterus was removed. Later, her family finally told the truth. The day before delivery, her mother-in-law had given her a bowl of talisman water, claiming it was for stabilizing the pregnancy. Director Zhao's eyes gleamed behind his glasses. The talisman water was sent for testing afterward. It contained an herb that inhibits uterine contractions. Without uterine contraction after delivery, the blood vessels couldn't close, and the bleeding wouldn't stop. What happened to the mother-in-law? She ran away and was never found. I folded the ultrasound report neatly and put it into my bag. Director Zhao, thank you, Ms. Shen, she called out to me. I don't know what's happening in your family, but you are my patient, and the child in your womb is my responsibility. If you feel anything is wrong, call me anytime, at any time. She pressed her business card into my hand. Besides the hospital's phone number, a mobile number was handwritten on the card in ballpoint pen. When I walked out of the obstetrics department, I stood in the corridor for a while. At the end of the corridor was the elevator area, and on the other side of the elevator area was the inpatient department. Crossing that long corridor and taking the elevator to the 7th floor led to the oncology department. Lu Yusin was in room 703. I didn't intend to visit her, but I saw someone, Lu Guilan. She came out of the elevator, head down, walking toward the other end of the corridor, carrying a thermos container in her hand. She didn't look toward the obstetric side but went straight in, pushing open a door. A sign hung on that door, Traditional Chinese Medicine Department. I stood there waiting for about 10 minutes. Lu Guilin emerged from the TCM department, and the thermos container was gone. She stood at the doorway, looking left and right, then hurried toward the elevator area. I waited until her figure disappeared inside the elevator. I pushed open the door to the Traditional Chinese Medicine Department. Inside sat an elderly doctor with graying hair, writing something in a notebook. Seeing me enter, he looked up, his gaze falling on my stomach. The obstetrics department is on the second floor, I knew. I sat down in front of him. The lady who just left was my mother-in-law. I wanted to ask what she was doing here. The old doctor paused his pen. That was your family elder? Yes. He was silent for a few seconds, then closed the notebook. She came to get medicine for a very old prescription called the life-extending decoction. What life-extending decoction? The old doctor opened the notebook, flipped to a certain page, and pushed it toward me. Strictly speaking, this isn't a formal formula recorded in the traditional Chinese medicine pharmacopoeia. It's a folk remedy, originating from the Fujian area, passed down for hundreds of years. The combination of herbs is very strange, the effects of several ingredients contradict each other, and it can't be explained pharmacologically. I looked at the densely written characters on the page. Dangui, Chinese angelica root, Chuanqiong, Sichuan lovage rhizome, Taoren, peach kernel, Pao Jiang, blast fried ginger, Zhigan Chao, honey fried licorice root. These are for promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis. The old doctor's finger tapped the page. They can be effective for postpartum lochia that won't stop, but the formula has several other ingredients. His finger moved down. Cinnabar, amber, and dragon's blood resin. These three aren't meant for human consumption. Cinnabar contains mercury and is toxic. Dragon's blood resin is a resin. It stops bleeding externally, but damages the stomach if taken internally. In TCM, amber is said to calm the nerves, but in this formula, combined with the blood-activating herbs above and the cinnabar, it makes no pharmacological sense at all. So what is this formula for? The old doctor took off his reading glasses and looked at me. Young lady, I'll be honest with you, in my 40 years of practice, I've only seen this formula twice. The last time was a year or two ago. An old lady from Fujian brought it. She said it was a family heirloom formula, specifically for extending the life of the critically ill. How it works, I don't know. That old lady never came back, and I don't know what happened to her patient in the end, but one thing I remember very clearly. He lowered his voice. She told me that the medicine brewed from this formula, the patient must not drink it, it must be given to another person to drink. What? A person connected by blood to the patient, the closer the relation, the better. Leaving the TCM department, I stood in the corridor, my palms sweaty. Life-extending decoction, the patient must not drink it, give it to another person to drink, the closer the relation, the better. In front of me was the bowl of black chicken soup Auntie Zhang had brought, the bowl of soup Lu Guilin had personally fed me. My phone rang. Zhongman Ruotang, are you free to talk now? You asked me to look into Lu Yenzhou's birth mother. I found something. The sound of rustling papers came from the other end of the phone. Lu Yenzhou's biological mother was named Su Wanqing. She married Lu Jinghong, the patriarch of the Lu family, in 1985 and gave birth to Lu Yenzhou the following year. She died of massive hemorrhage on the third day after childbirth. My fingers tightened abruptly. The cause of death was recorded as postpartum hemorrhage due to uterine atony. There was no autopsy, and she was cremated within 3 days. Su Wanqing's family was from Anxi, Fujian. Less than half a year after her death, her family moved away, and no descendants can be found now. Anxi, Fujian, right? Then, 1 year after Su Wanqing's death, Lu Jinghong married the current Lu Guilin. When Lu Guilin entered the household, she brought with her a baby girl, Lu Yusin, who had just turned 1 month old. To others, Lu Yusin was Lu Guilin's child from a previous marriage, but I checked Lu Guilin's marriage registration records, and she had no prior marriage records. Before marrying Lu Jinghong, my hand holding the phone trembled slowly. Are you saying Lu Yusin is not Lu Guilin's child from a previous marriage? She was either born to Lu Guilin herself, with an unknown father, or she simply isn't Lu Guilin's child at all. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a moment. Ruotang, I also found out something else. Before Su Wanqing married into the Lu family, she lived in Huaishu village, Anxi. For a while, the person she lived with was her distant cousin, named Lu Guilin. Outside the window at the end of the corridor, the sky was almost dark. I stood at the entrance of the traditional Chinese medicine department, watching the twilight outside the window gradually fade. the little one in my belly moved once, then again, as if sensing something. Su Wanqing and Lu Guilin, 2 women from the same village. One married into the Lu family and died of massive hemorrhage 3 days after giving birth, while the other entered the household as a distant cousin, bringing with her a baby girl of unknown fatherhood, becoming the new mistress of the Lu family. And now, 30 years later, Su Wanqing's daughter-in-law almost died of massive hemorrhage after giving birth, while that baby girl, Lu Yusin, suffers from a terminal illness and needs a peace buckle to replace her life. There are no such coincidences in this world, Zhong Man, I said. Help me find an elderly person in Huaishu village, the older, the better. Ask if there is a method in the village to replace one's life with a peace buckle, and also ask about Su Wanqing. I understand, Ruotang. As for you, I'm fine. I hung up the phone and walked toward the elevator. When the elevator doors opened, there was someone standing inside, Lu Yenzhou. He froze when he saw me. Ruotang, why are you at the hospital for a prenatal checkup? I stepped into the elevator and stood beside him. And you? I just visited Yusin and was about to head back. The elevator doors closed, and we began our slow descent. In the cramped space, only the 2 of us remained, our breaths audible to each other. How is Yusin? I asked. Not well, he replied, his voice muffled. The doctor said that if an effective treatment isn't found within 3 days, she might. He didn't finish his sentence. The elevator reached the 1st floor, and the doors opened. I walked out, and he followed behind me. As we reached the hospital entrance, he suddenly called out to me, Ruotang. I stopped but didn't turn around. That piece not. His voice came from behind me, low and soft. Did you really bring it? I turned to face him. In the twilight, half of his face was illuminated, half in shadow. The light at the hospital entrance stretched his shadow long, overlapping with mine. Yenzhou, why do you keep asking about this? He didn't answer. Are you afraid I brought it, or afraid I didn't? His Adam's apple bobbed. I'm afraid you brought it. The moment he said those words, it was as if part of his strength had been drained. His shoulders slumped, and his eyes dimmed. Do you know what the peace buckle is for? I said this wasn't a question. She closed her eyes, knowing when she knew. After Yusin fell ill, his voice became so hoarse it was almost inaudible. Mom told me there was a way. Yusin needed someone connected to Yusin by blood, but Lu Yusin and I aren't related by blood. Yes, we are. He opened his eyes and looked at me. You're carrying the Lu family's child in your womb. That child shares the same blood as Yusin. The wind blew across the square in front of the hospital, carrying the scent of disinfectant. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the heartbeat of the little life inside. So, I'm using my child to save Lu Yusin's life. Yenzhou's lips moved. I didn't know it would cost you your life. He said Mom told me it was just borrowing a bit of the child's vitality. The child would be weaker after birth, but there wouldn't be any serious harm. I didn't know when you found out it would cost me my life. He fell silent. I asked, when? Last night. His voice broke into fragments. Last night, when Yusin had an episode, Mom went crazy, shouting that the peace buckle had shattered, the life substitution spell had backfired, and Yusin wouldn't survive. That's when I realized, if you had been wearing that peace buckle, you would have been the one in trouble last night. He took 2 steps forward, reaching out to grab my arm. Ruotang, I didn't know. I really didn't know it would cost you your life. I thought it was just something that would make my child a little weaker, just something that would slow down my postpartum recovery. Lu Yenzhou, do you fucking think that's acceptable? He froze in place. I took out the 3 broken pieces of jade from my bag and laid them out in my palm. Look closely. The streetlight shone on the broken jade, and the dark red patterns at the fracture looked like congealed blood. Lu Yusin's name is carved on this peace buckle was prepared for him from the very beginning. Whoever wears it ties their life to Lu Yusin's. The more severely Lu Yusin falls ill, the more dangerous it becomes for the person wearing the jade buckle. When Lu Yusin is critically ill, the person wearing the jade buckle will die in his place. In my past life, no, if I hadn't discovered it, the one who died last night wouldn't have been that dog, it would have been me. Your wife and your unborn child. The color drained from his face bit by bit. You gave the peace buckle to that dog last night. Yes. How did you know? How did you know there was something wrong with that peace buckle? I looked into his eyes. Because I've already died once. He took a step back. What are you saying, Lu Yenzhou? Do you believe in reincarnation in this world? He didn't answer. His eyes were filled with fear. Not fear of me, but fear of the truth. I believe. I answered for him. Because I've experienced a past life. Your mother placed that peace buckle around My neck, that night, my stomach began to ache. I was rushed to the hospital, but I couldn't save the baby, and I couldn't save myself either. Lying on the delivery bed, blood flowed out of my body. I heard your mother talking to you at the door, saying that Yusin's indicators had improved, that a miracle had occurred. Then you turned and left. Not a single person came in, not a single one. Lu Yenzhou's legs gave way. He staggered and leaned against a pillar at the hospital entrance, as if all the bones had been drained from his body. You did nothing. Do you know what your mother was doing? You pretended not to know. You thought it was just borrowing a little vitality. You thought it didn't matter if the child was weaker, since there would be more children anyway, right? He opened his mouth but couldn't make a sound. I put the broken jade back into my bag. Lu Yenzhou, I'm not settling this score with you now. It's not because I've forgiven you, it's because I have more important things to do. What things? To find your mother's route. Turning to walk toward the parking lot, Ruotang called out to me from behind. Where are you going? Putua Mountain. I'll go with you. I stopped and turned to look at her. Her eyes were red, and her expression was like a mask shattered by a punch. It wasn't anger, nor was it grievance. It was something she didn't even know how to face. Guilt, or fear, or perhaps both. Have you thought it through? I said, if I tell you to come with me, it means you're standing completely against your mother. She was silent for a long time, then she walked over and stood beside me. I owe you a life. I owe the child a life. Her voice was still trembling, but every word was clearly articulated. I don't know how to repay you, but at least let me know what my mother really did. I didn't answer her. I pulled open the car door and slid into the driver's seat, while she walked around to the other side and got in. As the car drove out of the hospital parking lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The windows of the oncology department on the 7th floor were lit, and Lu Guilin stood by the window, looking down. From such a distance, I couldn't make out her expression, but I knew she saw it. Saw me and her son getting into the same car, heading toward Putua Mountain. Putua Mountain isn't in Putua. Many people don't believe it when I say that, but the location Zhong Man sent me isn't the incense-filled Putua Mountain in Zhoushan. Instead, it's deep in the mountains at the border of Anxi and Zhangzhou in Fujian. The navigation showed a total distance of 470 kilometers, a drive of 6.5 hours. Lu Yenzhou sat in the passenger seat, silent since we got on the highway. His phone kept vibrating, the same name flashing repeatedly on the screen, Mom. He didn't answer, nor did he hang up, just let it vibrate. When it rang for the third time, I reached over and flipped the phone face down, pressing it against the center console. If you don't want to answer, don't let it bother you. He didn't say anything, just turned to look out the window at the streetlights speeding past. Night had completely fallen, there weren't many cars on the highway. Occasionally, a truck would overtake us, stirring up a gust of wind. After about an hour, he suddenly spoke. Ruotang, in that past life you mentioned, did I really never look at you, not even once? My hands on the steering wheel didn't move. You did, outside the delivery room, when your mom was talking to you. You glanced inside, just once, and then you turned and walked away. Her breathing grew heavy in the quiet car. After a long time, he buried his face in his hands, his voice muffled through his fingers. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. The car continued forward. When the navigation announced a service area 30 kilometers ahead, Lu Yenzhou suddenly lifted his head. I just remembered something. What is it? My mom, Lu Guilin, every year when she goes to Putua Mountain, she never lets the driver take her. She always drives herself, and she's gone for 3 or 4 days. When she comes back, she stays in the prayer room all night, not letting anyone in, and when she comes out the next morning, her eyes are always red. The innermost room on the 3rd floor of the house with the Buddhist shrine. After you married into the family, he told you that it was his private space for storing formal attire, and no outsiders were allowed to enter. My fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel twice. I had lived in the Lu family's villa for over a year, yet the door to that room on the 3rd floor was always locked. Lu Guilin said that a Buddha statue was enshrined inside, and opening it casually would offend the deity. I believed her, and that was also something I hadn't had the chance to verify. Have you ever been inside? I asked. Once, when I was little, I sneaked in. Lu Yenzhou's voice grew somewhat distant, as if recalling something from long ago. What was enshrined inside wasn't a Buddha statue, but a memorial tablet, whose tablet, it had no name written on it, red background with black characters, and only one character carved on it, Su. The car swayed slightly. I steadied the steering wheel and glanced at him. his face looked pale in the dim glow of the dashboard, his eyes fixed straight ahead into the darkness. Su Wanqing, I said, her eyelids fluttered. She didn't deny it, nor did she ask how I knew, she simply leaned the back of her head against the headrest, closed her eyes, and let out a long breath. When I was 6, I found an old box in the attic. Inside was a black and white photograph of a woman in a qipao holding a baby. On the back, it read, Wanqing, taken on Yenzhou's 100th day. I showed it to my father, and he slapped me and burned the photo, and then, after that, I never found anything related to him in the house again, except for that memorial tablet in the Buddhist shrine. Lu Guilan went in to burn incense on the 1st and 15th of every month, staying for 1 or 2 hours each time. When I was 12, I sneaked in and looked at the tablet. Instead of fruit offerings, there were bowls of medicine, a bowl of dark, thick herbal soup that had been sitting there so long it had solidified into a lump. Medicine bowl to prolong life. Su Wanqing has been dead for 30 years, 30 years. And Lu Guilan is still offering her medicine, not as an offering, but as a suppression. I pressed the accelerator a little harder, increasing the speed to 120 km per hour. The estimated arrival time on the navigation dropped from 6.5 hours to 5 hours and 40 minutes. Lu Yenzhou, where is your mother from? Fujian, more specifically, Anxi. She and my biological mother are from the same hometown. The two of them came out of the village together. After my biological mother married my father, she moved into the Lu family under the guise of being a cousin. After my biological mother died, she married your father, and your father, what role did he play in all of this? Lu Yenzhou remained silent for a long time, so long that the navigation system announced, in 500 meters, turn right into the service area. I steered the car into the service area and parked. Only then did he speak. My father has only ever listened to one person in his life. That person isn't my mother, it's Lu Guilan. He let out a bitter laugh. Strange, isn't it? He's the chairman of the Lu group, commanding respect and influence everywhere he goes, yet at home, he doesn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Whatever Lu Guilan says, he does. I used to think it was love, that he was just afraid of his wife, but later, I started to feel something wasn't quite right. What was it? He wasn't afraid, he paused, as if searching for the right word. He was being controlled. The lights from the service area filtered through the windshield, casting his face into alternating patches of light and shadow. I turned off the engine, and the car fell silent, save for the faint clicking sounds of the cooling engine. Lu Yenzhou, where is your father now? At home. Call him. He froze. Now, put it on speaker. He hesitated for a few seconds before taking out his phone, scrolling through his contacts, and dialing the number saved under Dad. The phone rang 5 times before it was answered. Yenzhou. Lu Zhenghong's voice came through the speaker, slightly hoarse, as if he had just been woken up. What is it so late at night, Dad? Lu Yenzhou glanced at me. I want to ask you something. Can't it wait until tomorrow? My mother, my birth mother, Su Wanqing, how did she die? Silence fell on the other end of the line. It wasn't the silence of someone caught off guard. It was the silence of someone whose throat had been choked by something. I could hear Lu Zhenghong's breathing grow heavy and ragged, like a trapped beast. Who told you to ask this? His voice was low and tense. Was it Ruotang? Has she been whispering in your ear? No. Lu Yenzhou's voice actually calmed down. It was me who wanted to ask. I'm 36 years old, Dad. I have the right to know how my biological mother died. The postpartum hemorrhage case report is written clearly. What else do you need to ask? And what about Lu Guilan? When Lu Guilan married you, she brought a 1-month-old child, Lu Yusin. Whose child is she really? Something was knocked over on the other end of the phone. You're crazy. Lu Zhenghong's voice suddenly rose. Are you insane, Dad? Stop asking about your mom. Do you know how much your mom sacrificed for this family? And now you're questioning your own father over a woman. I reached out and took the phone from Lu Yenzhou's hand. Dad, it's me, Ruotang. The other end of the line fell silent again. Don't hang up yet, I said calmly. I just want to ask you one question. Before Su Wanqing had postpartum hemorrhage, did Lu Guilan give her a bowl of soup to drink? Lu Zhenghong's breathing suddenly stopped, not because he hung up, but because his breathing genuinely paused for a moment. Then he began coughing violently, as if trying to cough his lungs out through his throat. Amid the coughing, there were indistinct words I couldn't make out, and I didn't need to. His reaction had already given me the answer. I understand, Dad. Rest early. I hung up the phone and handed it back to Lu Yenzhou. His fingers were ice cold. Ruatang, do you think my dad is also an accomplice? I started the car again and drove out of the service area. On the highway, the empty high beams illuminated a stretch of road ahead, while everything else was swallowed by thick darkness. It's not a thought, I said, it's a certainty. The car drove through the darkness for 3 hours. At 2 in the morning, we entered Anchi territory. After getting off the highway, the navigation led us onto a winding mountain road. On both sides were dark, shadowy tea plantations. Occasionally, we passed a village with lights on, only to leave it behind quickly. At 4 in the morning, the navigation announced, "You have arrived near your destination." The car's headlights illuminated a crooked stone tablet by the roadside, engraved with 3 characters, Huaishu Village. The village wasn't large, dozens of households scattered along the mountain slopes. The houses were all old-style southern Fujian red brick dwellings, their upturned eaves and corners appearing ancient and silent in the beams of the headlights. There were no streetlights in the village, only a few windows emitting dim, yellowish light. I parked my car beneath a large locust tree at the village entrance. The tree was truly massive. Its trunk was so thick that 3 people couldn't wrap their arms around it. Its canopy blotted out the sky and sun, casting the entire village entrance in shadow. The trunk was hung with countless red cloth strips, some faded to grayish-white, others still vibrant, swaying gently in the night breeze. Each red strip was tied with a peace buckle, Ping & Co., of varying sizes and materials, jade, wood, stone, and even hundreds woven directly from red string. When the wind blew through the tree, the buckles brushed against one another, producing a delicate, rustling sound, like people speaking from afar. Lu Yenzhou stood beneath the tree, looking up at the peace buckles. "What are these, life-saving peace buckles?" A voice came from behind the tree. Lu Yenzhou and I both turned our heads as an old woman emerged from the woods. She was very old, her hair entirely white, gathered into a bun at the back of her head. She wore a dark indigo, cross-collared cloth shirt and carried a kerosene lamp. The lamplight stretched her shadow thin and long. She walked up to us, raised the lamp, and shone it on my face, then on my belly. "Over 9 months, isn't it? Where did it come from?" The Lu family matriarch narrowed her eyes. She lowered the lamp, illuminating the tangled, gnarled tree roots on the ground, and spoke slowly. "This locust tree has stood in the village for 400 years. It's a rule passed down through generations. When someone uses a peace buckle to save a life, they must hang the buckle on the tree afterward, so the tree god can witness that the karmic debt of saving a life has been settled." She raised her hand and pointed with her withered fingers at the highest branch, where several jade buckles hung. Their color was no longer white but a dark red. "These are the ones that successfully saved a life." Her fingers moved downward, pointing to broken, pieced-together jade buckles lower down. "These are the ones that only partially succeeded before being broken." Then she withdrew her hand, turned to look at me, and asked, "Girl, are you here to hang a buckle or to find one?" I looked into her eyes. "I'm here to find someone, Su Wanqing." The old woman's hand trembled, the lamp swayed, and the light and shadows shattered across the ground beneath the locust tree. "Su Wanqing died 30 years ago. I know. I'm here to find something she left behind." The old woman fell silent for a long time. The night wind blew down from the tea mountain, and the hundreds of peace buckles on the locust tree rang out in unison, tinkling like a distant rain. "What relation are you to her?" "I'm her daughter-in-law." The old woman's gaze turned to Lu Yenzhou, lingering on his face for a long while. "Are you Wanqing's son?" Lu Yenzhou nodded. The old woman raised the kerosene lamp and brought it closer to his face, the light sweeping inch by inch over his brows, eyes, nose, and chin. As she looked, tears suddenly welled up in the old woman's eyes. "You look like your mother." She set the kerosene lamp down, her voice growing very soft. "Your mother was the prettiest girl in our village. Her eyes were like mountain spring water, and when she smiled, she had 2 dimples. On the day she got married, the whole village came to see her off in the red sedan chair. It was carried out from the village entrance, and firecrackers went off for half an hour, and then," Lu Yenzhou's voice trembled. The old woman didn't answer. She turned around and walked into the village, carrying the kerosene lamp. "Follow me." We trailed behind her, passing through narrow stone-paved alleys and one silent red brick house after another. The village was very quiet, with only the flickering light of the kerosene lamp leading the way ahead. The old woman stopped in front of the smallest red brick house. The courtyard gate wasn't locked. He pushed the door open and walked in. The yard was overgrown with weeds, and the main room was pitch black, a damp, musty smell hitting him in the face. The light from the kerosene lamp shone inside, illuminating a black and white photo on the altar in the main hall. The woman in the photo was wearing a cheongsam, holding a baby in her arms. She was slightly tilting her head, as if looking at someone outside the frame, a faint dimple at the corner of her mouth, exactly like the photo Su Wanqing had left for Lu Yenzhou. Lu Yenzhou stood on the threshold, his entire body frozen. The old woman hung the kerosene lamp on the doorframe, walked up to the photo, and pulled out a metal box from under the altar. The box was rusted, and she had to force it open with 2 hard tugs. From inside, she took out a letter. The envelope was made of craft paper, yellowed and brittle with age. On it were 4 words, "To my child." Before Wanqing left, she left this letter with me. She said that if one day her child came looking, I should give it to them. If no one came, I should burn it. The old woman handed the letter to Lu Yenzhou. 30 years, you've come. When Lu Yenzhou took the letter, his hands trembled so much he could barely hold it. He opened the envelope and pulled out the thin sheet of paper inside. The characters on the paper were small and densely packed, written with a brush. The ink had faded, but every word was still legible. As he read the letter, I stood beside him and also saw its contents. Yenzhou, by the time you read this letter, your mother is probably no longer here. Don't blame your father. He is a pitiful man too. He was held by Lu Guilan's leverage and could never break free in his lifetime. Lu Guilan is my cousin. We grew up together in Huai Tree Village. She knows the village's secret. The piece not under the old locust tree can replace a life or extend one. She used this secret to step by step enter the Lu family. When I was 7 months pregnant with you, she came, claiming to take care of me, but in truth, she was waiting for an opportunity. On the day you were born, she brought me a bowl of soup, saying it was a postpartum medicine passed down in the village that would help me recover quickly. I drank it, then I started bleeding, and it wouldn't stop. I lay in a pool of blood for 3 days. She sat by my bed and didn't shed a single tear. She told me, cousin, you can go in peace. I'll take good care of your man for you, and I'll raise your son for you. She also said it wasn't that she was heartless, but that she needed an identity, the Lu family's identity. I begged her to spare you, and she agreed. I don't know if she will keep her word, but your mother has no other choice. Yenzhou, the person I've wronged most in this life is you. I've left you alone in this world to face those people. If one day you read this letter, don't think about avenging me. Revenge will only drag you down too. Just remember this, the peace not of Huai Tree Village binds with blood and trades with lives. Lu Guilan used my blood to bind the Lu family. She returns every year to chant sutras under the old locust tree, not to release my soul, but to suppress me. She's waiting for the day my soul scatters completely. Yenzhou, your mother is afraid, not of my soul scattering, but of never seeing you again in this lifetime. Your mother. Su Wanqing, July 15, 1991. The letter slipped from Lu Yenzhou's hand and drifted to the ground. He stood before the altar table, facing the woman in the photo with a dimple at the corner of her mouth, and his knees buckled as he knelt down. His shoulders trembled violently, but no sound escaped him. A tear fell onto the blue brick floor, then another, and another. I bent down, picked up the letter, folded it, and placed it back into the envelope. The old woman stood at the doorway with her back to us, her hunched figure stretched long by the light of the lantern. Her voice drifted in from outside, as if coming from a faraway place. 3 years after Wanqing's death, Lu Guilan returned once, burning paper offerings under the old locust tree for 3 days and chanting scriptures for 3 days. After she left, 3 red jade buttons appeared on the tree. I climbed up to look, and each one was engraved with a character. What characters? I asked Su Wanqing. She turned around, the lantern light illuminating her face, the wrinkles filled with tear stains. She had sealed Wanqing's soul inside those 3 jade buttons, returning every year to chant scriptures, not to guide her to the afterlife, but to ensure Wanqing would never find peace. In front of the altar, Lu Yenzhou was still kneeling, but his shoulders had stopped trembling. He slowly stood up, turned around, the tear stains on his face not yet dry, but the look in his eyes had completely changed. It wasn't sorrow, it was something cold, bone-chillingly cold. Where are those 3 jade buttons now? The old woman raised her hand and pointed toward the village entrance. Still on the tree, 30 years, through wind and rain, not a single red string has broken. Lu Yenzhou stepped over the threshold and walked toward the village entrance. I followed behind him. The old locust tree stood just as it always had. Hundreds of peace buttons swayed gently in the night breeze, moonlight filtering through the gaps in the canopy, casting mottled patterns on the ground. Lu Yenzhou looked up. For a long time, Then he saw it. At the very top of the canopy, 3 red jade buttons hung side by side on a slender branch, moonlight shining on them, red like 3 drops of congealed blood. He took off his coat and began climbing the tree. I stood under the tree watching him. He was never one to climb trees, his fingers gripping the rough bark, his feet slipping several times, but he didn't stop, inching his way upward until he reached beneath that slender branch. He reached out his hand, and the moment he touched the red string, all the peace buttons on the trees suddenly began to ring. Hundreds of jade buttons swayed together, the tinkling sound carrying far into the night breeze, like many people crying, or like many people laughing. Lu Yenzhou clutched the 3 red jade buttons in his hand and slid down from the tree. His palms were scraped raw by the bark, bleeding, the blood mixing with the color of the red jade buttons. He held the jade buttons out to me under the moonlight. I saw clearly. On the inner wall of each jade button was engraved a birth date, Su Wanqing's birth date, Ruotang. His voice was so hoarse it was almost inaudible. Tell me how to break it. I looked at the 3 blood-red jade buttons in his palm, then at the peace buttons on the old locust tree that had been shattered and pieced back together. Then I reached out and took the 3 jade buttons from his palm. Your mother's soul has been suppressed for 30 years. To break it, it's not enough to just shatter them. What must be done? I raised the 3 jade buttons to the moonlight. They grew slightly warm in my palm, like 3 faint, still beating hearts. Repay in kind. I turned to look at the village entrance, the road leading out of the mountains. Dawn was approaching, and a thin layer of grayish-white light had already seeped through the eastern ridge. Lu Guilin, you used a piece knot to bind your mother, used a life-prolonging soup to kill her, and then used a substitute to suffer. In her place, I have 3 scores to settle with you and your child. One by one, I clenched the 3 red jade knots tightly. The first score starts with this old locust tree. When the sky had fully brightened, the peace knots on the old locust tree no longer made a sound. The eastern ridge was dyed golden red by the sunlight, and rays of light pierced through the gaps in the tree canopy one by one, shining on the hundreds of jade knots. Jade, wood, stone, all glowed softly in the morning light. Quiet and still, as if exhausted after a whole night of turmoil, yet the 3 red jade knots in my palm grew hotter and hotter, not the kind of warmth from body heat, but a heat that seeped from within the jade itself, like 3 tiny, burning embers. I spread them out on my palm, and under the morning light, the red was so intense it seemed almost ready to drip. The old woman glanced at them, and her expression changed. We couldn't wait any longer. He picked up the lantern, turned, and walked toward the village. After taking 2 steps, he looked back and said, "Bring the knots and follow me." Lu Yenzhou and I followed behind him, crossing the stone slabs as if passing through the silent red brick houses, all the way to the deepest part of the village. There stood a very small temple. Calling it a temple was generous. It was just a stone-built house, without even a plaque above the doorframe. Moss grew thick in the crevices of the stones, and the incense burner at the entrance was filled with a thick layer of ash. As if no one had visited in a long time, the old woman pushed open the wooden door. Inside, what was enshrined wasn't a bodhisattva but a natural stone. The stone was as tall as a person, shaped like a tree root, its surface covered in honeycomb-like pores. Each pore was stuffed with a peace knot, densely packed, so that at first glance, it looked as if the stone had countless eyes. Was this the true ancestral hall of Locust Tree Village? The old woman hung the lantern on a nail by the door. This stone was here even before the village was built, she said. The elders say that beneath this stone lies an earth vein, connected to the life force of the surrounding 100 miles. For generations, the villagers have crafted peace knots, and the jade and wood materials used must be placed before this stone for 49 days before they can be carved. She walked up to the stone and reached out to touch the peace knots in the pores. Only materials that have been offered here can produce knots with spiritual power, knots that can substitute lives, prolong lives. And she turned to look at the 3 red jade knots in my palm. How do you break a soul-sealing knot? I asked. The old woman didn't answer directly. Instead, she took out a very old jade knot from a small pore at the very bottom of the stone. The knot had turned yellowish, and the patterns carved on it were nearly worn away. This is the jade button that Wanqing had personally offered to for 49 days. Before her marriage, she took it with her when she went to the Lu family, but it was later removed by Lu Guilin and replaced with those 3 red buttons. He placed this jade button in my palm, aligning it side by side with the 3 red jade buttons. There is only one method for the maiden to break the wind soul technique, using the original owner's button to draw the soul back. He pointed to the ground in front of the stone slab. It was a single piece of bluestone, carved with a circular pattern resembling the Taiji symbol, though not entirely like the yin-yang fish, with no empty space in the center. The grooves shaped like the 2 buttons were placed into the yang groove for Wanqing's button, and the 3 red jade buttons were placed into the yin groove. The old lady's voice was very low, and then a person closely related by blood to Wanqing needed to drip blood onto these buttons. Lu Yenzhou took a step forward. "I'll do it." The old lady looked at him and nodded, taking a pin from her lapel and handing it to him. He took it and pricked the pad of his left ring finger. A drop of blood emerged, round and glistening, red as a small bead in the morning light. He held his hand above the old jade button. As the blood dropped, the 3 red jade buttons suddenly vibrated violently, not swaying from the wind, but trembling as if something inside was struggling desperately. The vibrations grew more intense, causing the jade buttons to collide with the bluestone slab, producing a fine, crisp sound that stood out clearly in the quiet room. Then the first red jade button shattered, not cracked, but exploded into countless tiny red particles, rising like a red mist from the yin groove. The powder did not fall to the ground but was drawn into the old jade button, seeping into it thread by thread. The color of the old jade button began to change, turning from yellow to white, then to a faint cyan, and finally to a warm, milky white, like the color of a willow branch. The second red jade button also shattered, with the same red powder being absorbed by the old jade button. Its color changed again, shifting from milky white to a slightly pinkish flesh tone, resembling living skin. When the third one shattered, a gust of wind swept through the stone room. No one knew where it came from, but it made the horse lantern on the door sway several times. The Taiji pattern on the bluestone slab suddenly lit up, not glowing, but the stone's veins themselves seemed to move. The yin-yang fish slowly rotated a little less than half a circle, and then everything returned to calm. The 3 red jade buttons completely disappeared, leaving not even a trace of powder, and Su Wanqing's soul was saved. The jade button lay quietly in my palm. Its color changed to a very pale, warm white, like sunlight shining on the petals of a white magnolia. The red string in the center of the jade button had broken at some unknown time, but the button itself remained intact, smooth and lustrous, with not a single crack. Lu Yenzhou stared at the jade button, not daring to blink. As he returned, the old lady did not answer. He walked to the door of the stone room and pushed the wooden door fully open. Morning light poured in, illuminating the stone surface pitted with tiny holes, casting shadows on the Taiji pattern on the bluestone slab, and shining on the warm white jade button in my palm. Then I saw a woman's shadow reflected on the surface of the jade button, faint, like a reflection on water, ready to scatter with the slightest breeze, but I saw it clearly. The woman in the cheongsam was holding a baby in her arms, and there was a shallow dimple at the corner of her mouth. She glanced at Lu Yenzhou just once, and then her shadow dissipated. The warmth of the jade button faded, turning into an ordinary piece of warm jade, lying quietly in the palm of my hand. Lu Yenzhou knelt on the bluestone slab, facing the stone and the jade button, her forehead pressed against the cold stone surface, her shoulders trembling violently. She cried without a sound, and the only thing audible in the stone room was her suppressed, broken breathing. The old woman walked over, placed her hand on the back of Lu Yenzhou's head, as if comforting a small child. Wanqing was gone, truly gone this time. His voice was hoarse, tears streaming down the wrinkles on his face. 30 years. He was finally free from the burden. Lu Yenzhou's sobs surged from deep within her throat, muffled against the bluestone slab, like a beast trapped for too long. Finally finding an outlet, I walked out of the stone room and stood at the doorway, holding the warm white jade button up to the sunlight. The sunlight passed through the jade button, casting a faint circular spot of light on the ground. In the center of the light spot was a very small, dark dot. I brought the jade button closer and saw that the dark dot wasn't an impurity but 2 characters engraved on the inner wall of the button, not a birth date, but 2 words, "Go home." My eyes instantly grew hot. This woman had been suppressed under the old locust tree for a full 30 years, her soul sealed inside 3 red jade buttons, treated as a trophy by her own cousin, who returned every year to reinforce the suppression. The last 2 words she left behind weren't about revenge or settling scores. They were, "Go home." She wanted to go home, back to Huai Tree Village, back to this small stone temple, back to this moss-covered stone. I clenched the jade button in my hand, turned around, and walked back into the stone room. Lu Yenzhou had already stood up from the ground, her eyes red as if about to bleed, tear stains strewn chaotically across her face. "Ruotang, yes, I'm going back to the Liu family." Her voice was calm, unnaturally calm, like a pot of boiling water with a lid tightly sealed, the surface perfectly still, but turmoil raging beneath. "What are you going back to do?" "Find the prescription for the life-extending soup, retrieve the bowl of medicine Liu Guilin has enshrined in the family shrine, and lay out everything she did 30 years ago, her peace button, her substitute life, piece by piece under the sun." She looked at the red veins in my eyes, each one clearly visible. "My mother can't go home anymore, but those who harmed her won't be allowed to stay anywhere either." Returning to the Liu family from Huaitree village was already the afternoon of the next day. On the way, Liu Yenzhou called Liu Guilin. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. Liu Guilin's voice came through the receiver, carrying a clear sense of caution. "Yenzhou, where have you been? Yusin is lying in the hospital. Your father is like a lost soul, and you've run off with that woman without a trace." "Mom," Liu Yenzhou interrupted her, his voice flat, "we're back, we'll be home tonight." There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. "It's good that you're back. Yusin's indicators dropped again today," the doctor said to prepare for the worst. "We'll talk when you get back." The call ended. Liu Yenzhou put down his phone, looked at the road ahead, and the corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't a smile, it was something colder than a smile. He was acting until the very end. I didn't respond. I reached into my pocket and touched the warm white jade button. It pressed against my palm, its temperature neither too high nor too low, like a small, quiet hand. By the time we arrived home, the sky was already darkening. The Liu family's villa was lit up, the curtains in the living room drawn tightly. Aunt Zhang opened the door, saw the expressions on our faces, said nothing, and silently retreated to the kitchen. Liu Guilin was sitting on the living room sofa. On the coffee table in front of her was a bowl of dark, murky medicinal soup. The soup had already gone cold, a dark film congealed on its surface. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She looked as if she had aged 10 years overnight. Liu Zhenghong sat opposite her, hunched over, his hands clasped on his knees, like a hollowed-out clay statue. When Liu Guilin saw us enter, she stood up abruptly. "Yenzhou, where have you been? Your sister is on the brink of death. Do you know that? Do you?" Liu Yenzhou walked up to the coffee table and looked down at the bowl of cold medicinal soup, life-prolonging soup, right, for Yusin. Liu Guilin's expression changed. The change started in her eyes. Her pupils first contracted, then dilated, and then the light in her entire eye socket seemed to tremble. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but Liu Yenzhou's next words cut her off. 30 years ago, you brewed the exact same prescription for my birth mother: angelica root, ligusticum, peach kernel, roasted ginger, cinnabar, amber, and siejia." Each word seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth, one after another, sharp and clear. She drank it, and then she started bleeding. She bled for 3 days, until she died. Liu Guilin took a step back, her calf bumping against the edge of the sofa, causing her to fall back into it. Her hands gripped the armrests, the veins standing out pale and taut. "Who told you?" "Who?" "Su Wanqing told me." Liu Yenzhou took the warm white jade button from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table, next to the bowl of life-prolonging soup. "The letter he left me was kept in Huaitree village for 30 years, and I brought it back today." Liu Guilin's gaze fell on the jade button, as if scalded, and she shrank back abruptly. Her eyes widened, reflecting a warm white light in her pupils, and her lips began to tremble. "Impossible, impossible. I reinforced those 3 red jade buttons every year. They couldn't have broken. They're broken," I said. Liu Guilin's gaze shifted to me, the fear in her eyes suddenly turning into hatred, thick and heavy, like that bowl of cold life-prolonging soup. "It's you." Her voice grew sharp and thin. "It's you, isn't it? Ever since the night you took off the peace button, everything has gone wrong." "What did I do?" I took a step forward, standing right in front of her. "I didn't die, and you're disappointed." Her mouth hung open, but no sound came out. "I wore the peace button you gave me, but I took it off right away and hung it around a stray dog's neck. That very night, the dog almost died, and the button shattered into 3 pieces." The next day, Liu Yusin's condition began to worsen. I took the 3 broken pieces of jade out of my bag and placed them one by one on the coffee table. I had sent them for testing. The inner wall of the jade buckle was engraved with Liu Yusin's name and birth details. This wasn't a peace buckle, it was a life substitution buckle. Whoever wore it would essentially tie their life to Liu Yusin's. The worse Liu Yusin's illness became, the more dangerous it would be for the person wearing the buckle. By the time Lu Yusin was critically ill, the person wearing the buckle would die in her place. Lu Guilan's breathing grew rapid and shallow. In my past life, I paused for a moment. I shouldn't have said it, but if I hadn't discovered the secret of this buckle, it wouldn't be Lu Yusin lying in the hospital waiting to die. It would be me and my child. Lu Zhenghong suddenly looked up, his eyes shifting from Lu Guilan to me, then from me to the 3 broken pieces of jade on the coffee table. His lips trembled, and the muscles on his face twitched one by one. Guilan, is what Ruotang's saying true? Lu Guilan didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the warm white jade buckle on the coffee table, fixed on Su Wanqing, the last trace she left in this world. Say something, Lu Zhenghong suddenly roared, his voice so loud it made the medicine bowl on the coffee table tremble. The black medicinal soup spilled out, flowing from the rim of the bowl onto the tabletop. Lu Guilan finally looked up at him, her expression strange, not fear, not guilt, but a deep, decades-long weariness. It's true, she said, Su Wanqing was killed by me, that life-prolonging soup was brewed by me. On the 3rd day after she gave birth to Yenzhou, I walked into her room with the soup and told her it was a postpartum medicine passed down in the village. She drank it, and then I waited. Her voice was flat, as if she were talking about something unrelated to herself. I waited for 3 days. She bled for 3 days in bed. The sheets changed one after another, each one soaked red. The last thing she said to me was, Guilan, I entrust Yenzhou to you. Lu Zhenghong's breathing grew heavy, like the sound of a bellows. You, why did you do this? Why? Lu Guilan suddenly smiled, a faint smile so subtle it could hardly be called a smile. Because I needed an identity that would allow me and Yusin to survive. Whose child is Yusin, really? Lu Yenzhou's voice cut in from the side. Lu Guilan remained silent for a long time, and then she said, Yusin is my child. Her father is a craftsman from Huaishu village who makes peace knots. Her gaze drifted far away, as if passing through the walls of the living room, through 30 years of time, landing in a very distant place. He refused to marry me, saying his craft was only passed down to family, not to outsiders. He didn't want me or Yusin, so I found Su Wanqing. She is my cousin, always luckier than me since childhood, prettier, married better, and even gave birth to sons. I told her, cousin, help me, let me stay in the Lu family. She agreed. Lu Guilan's voice began to tremble. She let me stay, had me take care of her during her postpartum confinement, serving her good food and drink every day, calling me Guilan affectionately. The more she did this, the more I hated her. Why does she have everything, and I have nothing? So you killed her? Lu Zhenghong's voice seemed to rise from the ground. Yes, I killed her, using the life-extending soup passed down in the village for centuries. The formula was originally meant to prolong the life of a critically ill person by having a blood relative drink the medicinal catalyst to transfer vitality. I reversed it, taking all of Su Wanqing's blood for myself. She raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. I drank the medicinal catalyst made from her blood, and her life was transferred to me. I lived, she died, and then I married you, bringing Yusin along. Yusin became the eldest daughter of the Lu family, and I became the lady of the Lu family. Su Wanqing's son has been calling me mom for 30 years. The living room was so quiet that only the ticking of the wall clock remained. Lu Zhenghong slumped on the sofa, his entire body like a wall stripped to its foundation, collapsing from within. His mouth opened and closed, emitting meaningless breaths. Lu Yenzhou stood motionless beside the coffee table, his face expressionless, his eyes devoid of tears, empty, like someone who had burned away all emotion, leaving only a hollow shell. The silence was broken by the doorbell. Aunt Zhang went to open the door, and in came Zhong Man, followed by 2 people in uniforms. Ruotang and Zhong Man quickly walked over to me, lowering their voices. I've gathered all the evidence, the testimony of the old doctor from the hospital's traditional Chinese medicine department, the analysis report of the life-extending soup prescription, the business registration of the Jiyuan Hall at the foot of Putua Mountain, the witness statement from the old lady in Huaitree village, and a copy of Su Wanqing's letter. He placed a thick file folder on the coffee table. It's enough to file a case. Lu Guilan looked at the file folder, then at the 2 uniformed people behind Zhong Man. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she said nothing. She stood up, very slowly, using the armrest of the sofa for support twice before steadying herself. Then she turned to look at Lu Yenzhou. Yenzhou, I raised you for 30 years. For 30 years, I cooked For you, attended your parent-teacher meetings, and stayed up night after night when you had a fever. None of that was fake. Lu Yenzhou finally looked up at her. His eyes were red, but there were no tears. You raised me for 30 years, and then you planned to use the same method to kill my wife and my child. His voice was very soft, like a needle falling to the ground. Every meal you fed me was taken from my birth mother's life. Every night you spent with me was bought with my birth mother's blood. You made me call you Mom for 30 years, and during those 30 years, my real mother was pinned under the old locust tree, suppressed by your scriptures once a year, unable to even let her soul scatter. He bent down, picked up the warm white jade button from the coffee table, and clenched it in his palm. This button was offered for 49 days by my mother before she got married. She wore it when she married into the Lu family, and she wore it when she gave birth to me. You took it off and replaced it with 3 red ones, sealing her soul at the top of the tree, exposed to wind and rain for 30 years. This morning, this button shattered, and those 3 red ones, my mother's soul, scattered. The last 2 words she left in this world were, "Go home." His voice finally began to tremble. She can't go home anymore, because her home has been occupied by you for 30 years. Lu Guilan's face turned completely pale. It wasn't the pallor of fear, but the pallor of someone who had been completely drained, like an empty shell. Yet she stood under the light in the center of the living room, her shadow stretching long and thin on the floor. She took one last look at Lu Jinghong, who was slumped on the sofa, his hands covering his face, his shoulders shaking as he let out muffled sobs. She took one last look at the bowl of cold life-extending soup on the coffee table, then she reached out her hands to the 2 uniformed people. "Let's go," she said softly, her voice seeming to drift in from a faraway place. 2 men in uniforms walked up, standing on either side of him. He didn't struggle, didn't even look back, just followed them step by step toward the door. When he reached the entryway, he paused and said only 2 words, "Uxian," then the door closed, and the living room fell silent again. Lu Jinghong's muffled sobs seeped through his fingers, heavy and stifled, like an old beast trapped in a cage. Aunt Zhang stood at the kitchen doorway, her apron still damp from washing vegetables, frozen in place, her expression as if she hadn't yet processed what had just happened. Lu Yenzhou stood beside the coffee table, clutching the warm white jade button in his palm, his fingers clenched so tightly that his nails turned white. I walked over and placed my hand over the back of his. Slowly, his fingers relaxed. The jade button lay in his palm, its warm white glow reflecting the living room light. "Gentle and quiet," he said, "go home." Lu Yenzhou's voice broke into fragments, but he couldn't come back. "He's back," I said. He looked up at me. The red jade button on the old locust tree had shattered, the recipe for the life-extending soup had been exposed, and Lu Guilan had confessed. I looked at the jade button in his palm. "Your mother waited 30 years, not for revenge, but for these things to be spoken, to be laid out in the sunlight, for her child to know the truth. Now you know. He can go home." Lu Yenzhou lowered his head and pressed the jade button against his forehead. His shoulders trembled violently, but no sound escaped. The living room clock struck 7 times. Outside the window, it was completely dark. The yard lights came on, illuminating the flattened shrub where the rhubarb had squeezed through. Still at the base of the wall, moonlight shone through the other side of the hole, casting a small, round spot of light on the ground. The next day, Lu Yusin woke up in the hospital. Her vital signs had stabilized, and the doctors called it a miracle. After 3 rounds of tests, all her data began to slowly improve. It wasn't a full recovery, but her life was no longer in danger. Zhong Man told me this news while I was at the obstetrics department for my final prenatal checkup. Dr. Zhao placed the ultrasound probe on my belly, and on the screen, the curled-up little figure stretched a leg, then an arm. The fetal position was perfect, and the due date was the day after tomorrow. Dr. Zhao handed me the ultrasound report and asked, "Ms. Shen, are you ready?" I took the report, looked at the small outline on it, and said, "I'm ready." When I left the hospital, I ran into Lu Jinghong. He was standing by the flower bed at the hospital entrance, holding a thermal lunchbox. When he saw me, he froze for a moment, then lowered his head as if unsure of what to say. I walked over, and he looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "Yenzhou, is he okay?" he asked. "He's handling Lu Guilan's case. The lawyer said the minimum sentence for intentional homicide is 15 years. Lu Jinghong's lips trembled. I went to see her. Her voice was hoarse. She told me that the biggest regret of her life wasn't killing Wan Qing, but letting Yenzhou call her Mom for 30 years. She said, she said when Yan Zhou first called her mom as a child. She cried all night. I didn't say anything. Lu Zhenghong looked up at me. I know I have no right to say this, but Yusin is innocent. He knew nothing from start to finish. I know, I said. Then, you won't do anything to him? No, I replied. She's alive and well, and he'll have to live with the knowledge of how much his mother did in his name. That's what he deserves. I turned and walked toward the parking lot, but after a few steps, I stopped. Dad, I won't cut off Yusin's medical expenses, not because I forgive you, but because, I touched my belly. I'm about to become a mother too. On my due date, I gave birth to a boy, a natural delivery weighing 7 pounds and 3 ounces. When Dr. Zhao brought him to me, he was crying. With his eyes closed, his cries loud and clear, filling the entire delivery room. Lu Yenzhou stood beside the delivery bed, unsure where to put his hands. Dr. Zhao handed the baby to him, and he held him clumsily, as if cradling a piece of porcelain that could shatter at any moment. The child cried twice in her arms, then suddenly stopped, opening his eyes to look at him. Those eyes were dark and bright, like 2 great beads, reflecting the lights of the delivery room in their pupils, as well as his father's face. Lu Yenzhou lowered his head and pressed his lips to the child's forehead. His shoulders trembled again, but this time he smiled. I leaned against the delivery bed, watching the two of them, father and son. Sunlight streamed in through the window, falling on the warm white jade pendant. The pendant was strung on a new red cord and hung around my neck, resting against my chest, warm like a small, quiet hand. A month later, I took the child to Huaitree village. The old locust tree still stood at the village entrance, with hundreds of peace pendants still hanging from its branches. When the wind blew, jade clinked against jade, and wood rustled against wood, making faint, delicate sounds. I took Su Wanqing's jade pendant from around my neck and hung it on the lowest branch of the old locust tree, not the highest, but the lowest, within easy reach. Mom, I said to the pendant, this is your grandson. The wind blew down from the tea mountain, and the peace pendants on the old locust tree chimed softly. The warm white jade pendant swayed gently on the branch, and sunlight passed through it, casting a circular spot of light on the ground. The light fell on the child's face, and he smiled. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.